This is a short video of VDMbee Strategy Planner 2.0. Here you see an overview of plans that you have, a plan portfolio. Basically, the scope of a plan is a business transformation initiative or a transformation initiative. Typically in an area where you want to create a business plan and demonstrate the impact of your business transformation. It may have multiple phases. For instance, here we have a plan, and each lane represents a plan. Introduction, scale up, growth, and where the business system, so to say, is different in the next phase. Within a phase, you may even have alternatives. And these phase names can be set the way you want, by the way. When you go into a plan, here is a plan, you can see the impact of the plan in terms of metrics, value metrics, directly from here. You start a dashboard. The dashboard is interactive and you can click yourself through it, like here. Sort of table of content. Yeah, that is easy for for presentation. And everything is interactive. You can show the details of everything, every element. For instance, this is a table. Here, multiple scenarios are selected, or the default scenario. You can give it a different name also, but if you start to create a plan, you get one scenario by default automatically, but you can rename it. And let's say you have set a target for yourself on the same values. These indicators we call values. And this shows, for instance, the gap here, sort of percentage gap between the two. How far is your performance from the target in all the periods, right? This also shows that you can not only calculate individual values based on their formulas, but you can also calculate on complete tuples, so to say, or sets, or complete scenarios. Let's say here columns. For instance, the distance between the default scenario and the target scenario, or another calculation or derivation based on an expression over more than one scenario. For instance, have your own performance divided by a norm or something like that. And here you see all the types of widgets if you scroll down. Like also combo charts, like here, combo chart where your performance is maybe compared with another. Here also the target scenario, but any scenario that you select for that. And I said everything is interactive. So for instance, when you calculate something, you may want to know how is this constructed. You just click on it and you see, okay, this is influencing it, incoming, this is incoming it, when you calculate this, and this is incoming it. And this thing itself influences the other two. And it is by a formula, like you can see it here, this formula here. And if you want to see, okay, you say, okay, this then, you can double click and you can expand it further and see. So this way, everything, every quantity that you see everywhere in Strategy Planner, when you click on it, when it is aggregated, when it is calculated, derived from something, you can always drill down for transparency and see where it came from. Okay. But you may now ask, okay, how do you get to something like this? And by the way, this is an interactive dashboard. You can also put everything in a report format, also in this software, Strategy Planner. So everything you have modeled, all the charts, widgets, everything can be linked into a rich text editor, which is a model by itself. You can add to it what you want. You can make a layout the way you want it, and you print it as another means of sharing your plan. When we go back to here, you have an overview of the models that you create to get to the results. The method that we follow is, over the phases, maybe discover, prototype, adopt. We call it continuous business model planning, by the way. Discover is the creative part where you make diagrams, you draw things with stakeholders, try to agree on things, how things work or are supposed to work. And when there is consensus about them in Strategy Planner, these pictures, these diagrams are turned into structured data, which is also made computationally complete as a basis for calculation and scenario planning. And then you present the results as I just showed you. And after implementation in the real world business, you may start monitoring based on your actual performance that you also feed back into Strategy Planner as another actual scenario and for comparison and see if you are on track, things like that. So a closed loop system. So discover, prototype, adopt through the phases. Okay. You will recognize that here in the plan models overview. Here's discover, prototype, adopt. Within discover, there is sort of implied sequence, context. I skipped it now. The ecosystem and business model, value streams, value creation. Okay, let's have a look at the business ecosystem. Here is an example of a business ecosystem, sort of helicopter model, where you draw companies, market segments, different companies, how these collaborate in a supply chain or a value network. And they provide offerings. We say value propositions because these also embody values, not only from the perspective of measured and calculated from the perspective of the provider, but also if you want with satisfaction and weights, etc., for the stakeholders, the recipients. Therefore, we call them value propositions. For instance, here, this role of material supplier provides material to the part supplier. And when I open it, for instance, and a few values, I see here the values that are delivered along with it. I can also show it for a wider range of periods. For instance, this wider. And also maybe show it via another widget type, let's say curves. So these are the values and how they evolve for this particular value proposition alone. But there are many values in the system, of course. They're all influencing each other. Okay. And by the way, if you go into an enterprise and say, okay, click on this, you may see it's, for instance, business model canvas or another type of canvas to see in one glance in a convenient, in a format that is convenient for you, how that business model is constructed, consistent with the ecosystem that we just saw, right? By the way, this is an ecosystem. This is a plan, a part of a plan, a starter of a plan in circular economy. So a company like ATA, it's called EEE, electronic equipment, electronic equipment, like dishwashers, cooking machines, refrigerators, things like that. And these are not only sold into the market, but they are also taken back as much as possible. Here you see a collection hub as a new sort of business who interacts with other participants. And here they're represented by its role, by the way. You can model by entities like organization units of enterprises and market segments, or you can also do by roles or a mix of it. And this one is about a sort of digital passport that checks if certain like dishwashers are still compliant enough according to certain regulations to be sold again after repair, maybe reusable into the market, or whether it has to be dismantled, disassembled to get to parts, and if these parts are then compliant, and then these are reusable parts into part suppliers, or if these parts are not even compliant, these parts will then be disposed. Disposed parts, but they are going to the recycler. You may get recycled material out of that, or otherwise it's landfilled with an impact to the planet. So I guess you understand all these. There may also be cycles, and circular dependencies even. That's also not a problem in Strategy Planner 2.0. You can just calculate also powerfully with cyclic dependencies as well. So this is an ecosystem. By the way, if this one is this role, this participant is providing this value proposition to this one, he or she by itself should also have a value stream, as we say, to deliver this. You can also look it up here. I guess it's here. This is a simplistic value stream. It can be way more complicated. The activities to do. There are also values, let's say, created by these activities, or values from partners received here and used, things like that. Yeah. So there is one more model maybe interesting to show. By the way, we have here business model canvases. So you decide as a model creator or with your stakeholders from the perspective of which participants you would like to analyze this plan and see the performance. And you give them a business model explicitly in this ecosystem. Here we have four. For 4 participants, we have the business model. At the beginning, when everything is just pictures drawn as canvases, like the business model canvas. But in prototype, when things are transformed in Strategy Planner itself into the structured data, you get structured business models. We call it business model cubes. We go into it in a minute. But there is one more thing. For each of the perspectives, you may have a value creation story, for instance, from the perspective of the manufacturer. And it's only a small snippet that I have drawn here. So basically, if it is full-fledged, it may be a way bigger than here, right? You may have without lanes, or with lanes, or with more or less lanes, differently named lanes. That doesn't matter. This is following the format of the Kaplan-Norton strategy map. You may be familiar with that. So it basically depicts values and their relationships. An incoming arrow means that this one influences this one, all right? These 4 influence this one. And you may expect here to have a formula, of course. You can see then the formula, like here. You see here formula, right? So there's a formula builder in the system also. You can look it up and say, okay, just say something. You can intelligence, you can imagine, right? So user-guided model building, in this case, formulas. And there is a powerful formula language implemented, Strategy Planner, if you are interested in that. Like, of course, you can use any integer constant, but also special constants like pi or the Euler's constant, right? Things like that. Operators like the basics, comparison, exponentiation. We follow Julia here, the Julia language, or logical operators, conditional branching operators, the ternary operator for a shortcut form of conditional logic, right? Also functions, built-in functions. Many of them you are familiar with from Excel maybe, but of course we have them also. Like absolute value, all kinds of rounding, ceiling, floor, trunk here. Power exponentiation for when you have an exponent which is something else than a constant. Like here even the current period in the horizon, we come to that. And logarithms. Natural logarithm, maximum, minimum, square root, mean, modulus, the sine, the cosine, the tangent, and all the other geometrical things here. A tangent, Here is something to derive from tuples of values, like calculate over scenarios. We do that by, if this is a scenario, by a source function. And a lot of period functions, because we are period oriented. You have periods like years, a horizon of years, and month, quarters that can be set. And then you can calculate over them from the expression language itself, like the current period you can know, or the quantity of a value of in a certain period, or you can make relative things in formulas like referring to the previous period, or offset by a number of periods backward and forward, or offset by years and then maybe shift to the first and last period of the horizon, or you shift by a number of, you offset by a number of years and you want to shift to the first or the last period of the resulting year, all these things. Or period aggregation functions, the sum over a range of periods, max, min, average. You can also iterate over, use a period iterator in, when you have an aggregation function. For instance, you calculate the net present value. You may be aware of that. Well, then you have a period aggregation of the p sum. What is the p sum expression? Because you want to have this part calculated within a p sum, in which you also use the period here, t, as an iterator. All this is embedded, supported within the expression language itself. So that is, you may be interested in that. That's very powerful. And it is also directly executed by, we use behind the scenes a mapping to a public domain mixed integer solver that we use for normal calculations as well as optimizations. All right. Okay. Go back here. We talked about that. And typically, when you have a full-fledged value creation story, you think about the competences that you use in your value streams. And what we mean mostly is the measurable or calculatable values or metrics of that, how that influences the value that you deliver to your customer in the ecosystem as a participant, and even the value that you capture yourself as the owner of the business model. And if you do that for multiple participants, and we also have such values for the ecosystem as a whole, to see the combination of all the participants together, all the interacting business models together, for instance, to the planet, the outside world, or influences of the outside world into the ecosystem, like gas prices, how these evolve, and things like that. Yeah. So far, discovery, and then these pictures are becoming data, structured data, and the structured data you can also look up, and we decompose the entire structured model by cubical business models. For instance, if we go just into it for a short while, you see here a business model which is a cube because it has 6 dimensions. When you go deeper into it, you see it defined 6 dimensions. One is, what are the participants in this business model? The owner, which is called my business here, the owner of the business model, and the customers and partners with, or stakeholders, you can also use it like that, with whom it interacts, collaborates, exchanges value in the ecosystem. Value propositions, these are what are exchanged between them. So what the owner of the business model is providing to customers or receiving from partners in the ecosystem. And, you know, my proposition is a value proposition which represents the value that the owner of the business model captures from collaborating in the ecosystem. It's sort of orthogonal to all the others. Activities for value proposition and my proposition, which is basically the value stream. Values related to value propositions, my propositions, and activities, and competence is used for values. Just to get, you can also get to the real meta model underneath, but then you have to click on this one, and that's more for the more technically oriented people, or the ones that would like to have the instance of the meta model, and you can export it and do your other things with it. Okay. Yeah, but this is just that you have a glimpse of what's underneath. And then you get from here into dashboard, for instance, but I showed you the simple dashboard already, which you can configure. The dashboard can be configured in the strategy planner, of course, because here it is a simple dashboard, but you can configure it by, you can set your multiple containers. You can put containers horizontally as siblings, or you can stack them at multiple levels. You can control their width and their height, and you can put content, whatever in it, what you want. Everything modeled can be put into it, also free text, but typically charts and tables, of course, right? And you can configure them. I'm not going to all the details, but quite powerfully. And in these dashboards, you can also say, okay, for instance, this is scenarios and then periods within scenarios, because here you group by scenario. If you turn it around, say group a period, then you get periods and maybe scenarios compared within a period. Yeah. Okay. Go back here. Two other models, so to say, which are sort of fixed models. Here is values. As I told you, it is period oriented. You can set, I can show you where it is, but I'm not going to do that now. For this plan, you can set, okay, the length of the horizon. You can also dynamically expand it if you would like to make it longer. You can do that by phase. I come to that in a minute. But you can set it by years, by quarters, months, 4-week periods. That is not uncommon, not uncommon in typically retail, or even weeks. Here it is in quarters, as you see, right? And also here, everything is drill downable, so to say. So when you click on it, and yeah, as you saw before, this is also expandable. Maybe you think, oh, these are many rows, but we can let's. So at a total level, you see the plan level indicators, the plan level total ecosystem total values, as we say. Yeah. Then within the ecosystem, you have multiple business models. Here are the 4 business models. When you open them, you see propositions, value propositions provided and received within a business model. Here you see the types of things, the types of things. And when you open it, let's say this one, you see the value, you see activities, maybe in the value stream of that value proposition. Yeah, and when you open it, you may see even values of activities there. Or maybe here, maybe a value proposition. You see a value of value proposition. This calculated, by the way. You see a calculation symbol. But also when you can collapse further, then you see it's a real true value proposition. For instance, you see also things like satisfaction, weight, and recipient opinion. Satisfaction from the perspective of the recipient. Okay, so you can functionally collapse and expand this as deep as you want. And you can also, because some of these values can be many, are input values that you either can set manually or input by import from external source. But if you have many periods, you may not want that. So and then you can also do projection or forecast. That can be done from this table. It can also be done from several other places. For instance, I can show you one convenient place. For instance, when you set your target here somewhere, targets. Okay, you may have here one more target that has no value yet. I did that for convenience for you, that you can right mouse, click, say extrapolate baseline. Why is that? Well, you only have one figure. So you can extrapolate baseline. But when I do that, I start a dialog. And in this dialog, you can say, okay, what do we want to do? A trend model, a linear with some growth. Or shall we say, no, do maybe a logarithmic, maybe with some scaling factor, let's say 0.3 or so, right? And maybe you can even put some seasonal patterns. Yeah, but let's not go into all the detail now. And okay, let me preview. Yeah, but you say, okay, can I have a better understanding and feeling of it? I show curve. Here you see, okay, do I like this as a forecast, or do I want to adjust it, discard it, and make it a little bit else? You can play with it, and then if you like it, you confirm it, and then it's updated in the table. This you can do in all the main tables in the system. This was, but let's now say, for instance, we wipe out from here, clear, or we wipe out from from here, clear horizon. Yeah, that's wiped out. And maybe when I do it now, I can also extrapolate trend. Why is that? Well, then there is sufficient historic data available for you based on which it can do itself trend analysis automatically, both for a trend and if it cannot find a trend, it does do Holt-Winters exponential smoothing, or it can also find seasonal patterns itself, right? Or if you set this, here I put here another number, I'd say I put here 60 manually, and maybe over here I say interpolate. You see, so there are all kinds of, let's fill it in, interpolate. Okay, you can then this, and okay, but I just now preview, I believe that, confirm, fine. So there are all kinds of convenient forecast projection methods to help you there. Maybe one other thing that you may be interested in, and I did not apply it yet in this starter of a plan, but I have another snippet of a plan in which I can show you an example. We go to the plan portfolio again, and let's say we go into this plan. By the way, this is a completely different plan. For instance, a completely different ecosystem. This is more like a spare parts distribution, worldwide spare parts, a little bit inspired by the Philips Medical Systems case in best, right? For your recognition. Okay. Okay, but let it be so. What I would like to show you here to you is, sorry, I went back too far. By the way, you see me navigating here. This is just a progressive web page, yeah? This strategy planner in the client. You know, the application logic runs on the server, but in the client it's a progressive web app. So you can also use browser back everywhere. That's very simple. And for the client you need nothing else than just a URL. Okay, but let me go into this plan, and I wanted to show you an example of. And then when we go into this scenarios, because I told you there is a default scenario, you can have also custom scenarios, but you can view them all here. And this is sort of Gantt chart, but here's only one thing. But okay, I can show you here. Go to scenario details. Yeah, this is what I would like to show you. You can also say for this scenario, it can also be a custom scenario, I want to maximize or minimize. Yeah, and then according to an objective. And in this objective, yeah, you can for a particular period or for a range of periods put an expression, and everything meaningfully for you, you can optimize. Yeah, here sort of combination of the profit and past demand is maximized. But you may say, okay, but for optimization you need constraints. Yes, so you can also in a structured way set your constraints or bounds. For instance, you can say a max bound or min bound or max and min that puts to keep an input value between, because when you optimize, the solver itself is going to shift input value quantities, but sometimes you would like to get them fixed by bounds, or you put upper and lower bound on it, or an upper or a lower bound. All these things can be done. And then you have also your config parameters for if you are really experienced in this, to give it more time. And you can get also a calculation feedback when you really do it, to see how many iterators, how many time, if it is feasible or not feasible, if certain constraints are not reachable or whatever. You get insight from that. But basically, when you optimize, you get your numbers back. Here in the right-hand side table, you get your numbers back. And when you don't like them, and you discard them, and when you like them, you accept them, and then the data gets updated. And if you have a scenario that is better than the scenario that was so far underlying your plan, you set it as the default, and then it's replacing the plan, basically. Things like that. Okay, maybe one more thing to show before we stop. Just one other fragment here. Here you see a plan with multiple phases, but when you get there, go into we say Gantt chart. This may be interesting. You can, for scenario planning, you can graphically edit and manage your scenarios. And you can see that these are pathways over the phases of the plan. but different scenarios can have attached different length and duration to the same phases. For instance, here there's only 1 year. Oh, by the way, there's years, but you can do the same with the other periodicity, like months, quarters. In this scenario, the third phase only has one period of the duration, 1 year, but in the second, 3 years or even more. Or you skip a scenario here, or you start only with the third scenario, with the phase, or the third phase for a particular scenario. And you can set all the settings for scenarios via these context menus over here at scenario total level, or over here at step level for a certain phase within a scenario, where you can put if you want to optimize or not, and how, where you can put where you can also, you can change the number of periods here by drag and drop, but you can also set it by properties when you go into the details, or you set your constraints, or you change your play buttons for what if simulation, that typical what if values, so that if you do that, you see also here you have, for instance, a progress table. This plan does not have anything, but when we go back to the other plan here, and we go in its scenarios model, the Gantt chart here, you see the progress. But if you have set what if values for the scenario, you would see a other table here with only figures for the play buttons, that you can, the input values for the play buttons, that you can only play with these, and to that you can better imagine what the impact of that will be, and then see what the outcome is of the scenarios, or the scenario executions, because you can have multiple runs for the same scenario, maybe by setting different quantities for the what if values and things like that. So I hope that this gives you a little bit a overview of the possibilities of Strategy Planner 2.0. Thank you.